Welcome to the Journey So Far, a reflection for a talk I gave at the end of my teaching placement. This presentation provides an opportunity to reflect on the session and deepen my understanding of the impact colleagues can have on my teaching practice. As the social constructivist approach suggests, learning is conducted in a social context, so providing an opportunity to discuss my project amongst colleagues and reflect on this process gives understanding across my colleagues, but also reinforces my learning. During this presentation, I will use the PowerPoint that I use, but rather than talk to the slide contents, I will emphasize what happened and what I have gained from this experience. Firstly, I will set the tone and context of the presentation. Then I'll reflect on the experience, provide explanation for the impact this has on my teaching practice, and indicate where and when feedback was sought and given. I will also discuss changes that I'd make if I were to have another opportunity to present. The Masters of Teaching journey has been a real challenge. It has been one of the most stressful experiences of my life. During the past 2 years, I've been hospitalised 3 times. I've had my entire department restructured with redundancies. I've taken extended periods off work, and I've had a really unsupportive and challenging work environment. Needless to say, during the first slide of this presentation, I broke down, struggling to thank those who had truly supported me. What this demonstrates is the passion I have for teaching. It is something I have dabbled in for 10 years and now have more understanding and passion for what I do. I've learnt so much about the world of teaching and learning and really only scratched the surface of what I want to know. But I've learnt so much about myself as a learner and also about my colleagues and how I work and learn with them. My placement was undertaken at the La Trobe Wildlife Sanctuary, La Trobe University's biggest outdoor laboratory space, where I engage with over 4,000 primary and secondary school students each year. We offer both off and on-site experiences, so some of my work includes the development and delivery of classroom sessions. This presentation was given to a number of colleagues, university education researchers, industry partners, as well as the principal and teachers from a local school I work with. The first slide of the presentation provided some context for the reason I undertook the Masters. Primarily, it's the satisfaction and joy I get from seeing smiles on student faces while learning. During this slide, I felt that I was providing an understanding to my colleagues and guests as to the multifaceted aspects of going back to study. There were some nods in the audience and a couple of people shared brief comments about similar reasons for getting into teaching or research. This slide was probably unnecessary, but I guess I was trying to provide a deeper understanding as to the breadth of skills required to perform my role, and that the Masters of Teaching has provided additional expertise and confidence in my abilities. From this point, I started talking about the journey of the Masters and what I have learnt and why I chose new pedagogies for deep learning as a topic. I introduced the pedagogical frameworks that have traditionally underpinned the Sanctuary's development and experiences. I've had a few questions about pedagogy and explained the various approaches listed, using some examples of teaching practice. I felt the audience understood and related to how the various approaches impact the how and why of teaching and how these link to the experiences we offer. On reflection, there's an argument to suggest that different lessons and activities could follow different approaches. This depends on the activities, the students, the desired outcomes, and the students on the day. So as a teacher, I may have various strategies that I employ to follow different methodologies, depending on what happens in the session. This was discussed in further detail at the end of the talk. The zone of proximal development gained some interest, appreciating the fact that a reasonable proportion of my audience were not education trained or in training. There was great discussion amongst the group about how individuals learn and whether the constructivist approach is relevant. The next 4 slides focused on the work of Fullan and Langworthy, Ken Robinson and Erica McWilliams and emphasised the basis behind my Masters research project. There seems a reasonable amount of discussion on the literature that education needs to change, and Fullan and Langworthy proposed a framework for schools to develop their own pedagogical models, which is what I have done in my research. This presentation provided another opportunity for me to vocalise, socialise and develop my thoughts in this area. The process of putting my thoughts into words and describing these to colleagues, gaining feedback and then readdressing the issues to further emphasise or change my perspective on the theories that underpin teaching and learning enabled a deeper formation of ideas into my consciousness. Linking this back to research, through the socialising of literature and research, I was able to create a deeper connection to new knowledge. Whilst discussing the framework I had developed, I was able to link ideas back to the research I have undertaken and provide further context and examples of where this research has applied to my teaching practice so far. The audience was quite familiar with the Sanctuary Education experiences, so providing links from the framework to how they function in practice gave an opportunity for connections and further engagement with the session. Slide 10 through 12 of the presentation provided an initial glimpse into the methodology of my action research project, as well as detail behind the various sessions, experiences, and learnings from the placement. These slides worked really well because it further engaged the audience. I feel they were less interested in the discussion around pedagogy and educational theory because it was a bit dry, and more interested in the application of it. This could be because I am more passionate and comfortable about talking about this aspect, so my enthusiasm in describing the activities I've undertaken probably rubbed off. My final slide provided opportunity for us to explore some of the activities that have been developed as part of this project. These were engaging, hands-on activities that reinforced the pedagogical approach, the framework I had developed, and the learning outcomes. These worked really well and were a good precursor to enabling discussion questions. It relaxed participants and got them thinking. It also gave me an opportunity to chat to individuals. After the presentation, there was discussion about the way our staff may take on board the framework and how this may impact our training, development, and relationship building. I have reflected on this further and feel that further opportunities need to be provided for staff to engage with each other and explore aspects of this framework. This could be provided for a collaborative approach to future development and foster a more dynamic education model for the Sanctuary. Some colleagues expressed ideas around whether the new pedagogy for deep learning is actually new, a point which I had highlighted in the presentation. This could have been reinforced or described a bit better. I wanted to be clear that much of the new part of the model is about the synthesis of existing knowledge and approaches to suit context. There was also considerable discussion about the political landscape and the impact this has on teaching. Curriculum is constantly changing and its impact both schools and organisations like the Sanctuary in both a resource and training context. I've thought about this further and will develop mechanisms that will make any transition more efficient. In terms of pedagogy, I see a continual discourse between the neoliberal landscape and the practice of effective teaching, and this was recognised amongst the group. My resolution has been to put the Sanctuary in a position of expertise in educational theory to demonstrate in a small way how education can work, mostly because we tend to sit further outside political influence than schools, possibly due to our university association. If we could demonstrate current practice in a deep learning context, then we may inspire teachers to learn from their experiences with us, and vice versa. There was also discussion about the use of technology in learning and how Fullan and Langworthy mentioned pervasive use of technology. What I found interesting in this discussion is the diversity of opinion and understanding about what technology is and how it is utilised. I tried to make it clear that the use of technology doesn't mean giving a tablet to all students and seeing what happens. It is like any other teaching tool. There needs to be deliberate practice and strategies planned around its use, and the context by which it is used needs careful consideration. I am driven, however, to look further into ways in which technology can be used to support the learning of students in the Sanctuary. The group seemed to be satisfied that the use of video conferencing to reinforce learning after a visit would be a great initiative. I did reference Fullan and Langworthy in this discussion, where they discussed that schools spend billions on technology but aren't trained or resourced effectively to use it. There is again an opportunity for the Sanctuary to model its effective integration into learning. After the presentation, one of my colleagues approached me and wanted to discuss his thoughts about pedagogy and the new way of learning. He was quite concerned and wanted to offer his opinion that not all students learnt in the way I had described. We had a great discussion about this, and I relayed that this wasn't my intent. In fact, my intent was to describe a variety of pedagogy that we could choose from to suit context and different learning styles. I was really thrilled that he had gone away and thought critically about the presentation and was keen to discuss further. It meant that the presentation prompted a critical discussion. From this discussion, I know I need to be clearer when I'm sharing my thoughts on student learning. In the process of developing, presenting, and reflecting on the presentation to my colleagues, I have learnt that the process I have discussed in my thesis, shown here, is as applicable to lesson planning as it is to deepening my understanding of teaching and learning. It is dynamic and involves discourse and reflection to deepen one's ideas. Not surprising that this resonates with me again, as it mirrors aspects of the social constructivist approach. The presentation is, in itself, a reflection on my learning. It reinforces my ability to communicate my ideas, and it provides an opportunity for others to critically analyse my learning and theirs. This reflection, in turn, forms a community of practice that feeds further learning and potentially further interest in deepening aspects of my research. I've also deepened my connection with colleagues. They have a relatively good understanding of my research and have all approached me afterwards with encouragement and discussion about their ideas. This has aided in the development of a collaborative approach to the Sanctuary's journey and the partnerships we have with local schools. The learning from this extends to a reciprocal understanding and learning process within the Sanctuary learning community. In future teaching practice, this highlights the importance of professional development within the school community and providing staff opportunity to undertake and reflect personally and collaboratively. If I was to do this presentation again, I think I'd integrate the hands-on activities throughout and talk about the way they link to the framework, educational theory, and pedagogical approaches, so that it reinforces aspects of my learning throughout rather than at the end. This would also break up the educational theory aspects of the presentation. I would also remove a couple of slides as they tended to create confusion in both me and the consequent discussions. This is just about being more concise and precise about what I'm saying. In terms of the dynamics and discussion points, I think these aspects of the talk went well and that the presentation encouraged this. Perhaps a follow-up feedback form could aid in further reflection opportunities. In this presentation, I have tried to describe the tone and context of the presentation I gave to my colleagues and other staff. I have given reference to the Wildlife Sanctuary's context and the unique opportunity I have had to be able to use my work as a basis for research. I have reflected on both the presentation and the participants and their feedback and discussion, which has further developed my understanding that good teaching practice involves collaboration and reflection, and that this can be achieved through opportunities like this. This contributes to my broader teaching practice as it provides opportunity to work with colleagues and develop shared understandings of good teaching practice, linking to the context in which we teach and learn. It reinforces my understanding that providing opportunities for collaboration enable deep learning and the development of 21st century learning skills. Finally, I've tried to capture the passion and enthusiasm that the experience of the placement, research, presentation and reflection has highlighted, and that the journey so far has been a rich, authentic learning experience. Thank you.